Then you add an important, this is a very, very important theory actually today, self-determination theory. Ryan and Desai have done a lot of work. And what they've said is that every human being has three basic needs that they're always trying to satisfy. Okay. Uh, these three basic needs are independent of one another. However, they interact. The first and the most important basic need is of autonomy, that is having the ability to do what one wants to do, right? So if that is satisfied, then motivation level is more intrinsic. Then there is the need for competence, that is to master a particular task or behavior. So if they can do that, then again motivation it becomes more intrinsic in nature. And then there is relatedness, that is the need to get along with other people while you're doing particular kind of tasks, right? So there are three basic needs. If all three are highly satisfied, the person will have intrinsic motivation. If some of them are not very satisfied, they'll have extrinsic motivation. And if they are not really satisfied, then the person will not be motivated at all, right? So three basic needs of autonomy, competence, relatedness. Each of them are, every individual is trying to fulfill each of them, satisfy each of them. The more the satisfaction of all three put together, the higher is the intrinsic motivation that somebody feels. Lesser satisfaction is extrinsic motivation. Very minimal satisfaction or no satisfaction is leading to amotivation. They also say that intrinsic motivation is optimum for maximum perfect sort of performance, really good performance. Extrinsic motivation is not bad, but it will not give you the same level of performance, right? So this is a very, very important theory in terms of the organizational behavior construct today. Sexual motivation, right? This is a question that usually comes in net, saying that what are the four stages of uh, sexual satisfaction and reproduction? They'll use different terms, but basically, it's usually the four stages of arousal, right? But they might use different terms for it. Uh, Remember it as EPOR, right? It's basically the first stages of arousal is to get excited, right? That is, arousal is happening, right? And then the next stage is of plateauing, that is, the arousal continues till the muscle reaches orgasm. The spelling is wrong, the organism. Okay, orgasm, right? And then you hit orgasm, that is, there is semen release, or for females, there is release of what release? Vaginal liquid, right? I don't know what that is called. Okay. And then you have resolution, that is the arousal dip. So it's like a graph that goes like that, plateaus, and then it starts to fall off, right? So these are the four stages of arousal physiology given by William Masters and Virginia Johnson. So please remember these names. Think of EPOR. If you remember EPOR, you will get this answer absolutely correct, right? Uh, in terms of biology, what happens in your physiology is that your hypothalamus sends a signal to the pituitary gland saying that, okay, it's time to get aroused. The pituitary gland sends a message to the gonads, right? And the gonads release the gonadotropins, which are your hormones, right? And the gonadotropins are made up of androgens, testosterone, estrogen, and estradiol. These are all sex hormones, and they are released when somebody is aroused or engaging in the process of sex, right? Um, all of this will develop only when somebody has organized or developed sex organs, right? Which are called gonads, right? Now, in childhood, not childhood, in prenatal stage, your sex discrimination determination also takes place, right? Which is basically when a baby is born, right? For the first 6 weeks, there is no sex differentiation, right? There is no sex determination. It's a asexual sort of baby, not asexual, but it doesn't have gender or sex, right? Um, Now, the differentiation takes place because of the Y chromosome that comes from the father, right? So females have XX chromosome and males have X and Y chromosome, right? Uh, so when the fertilization takes place, that time either the father's X and mother's X combine, in which case it'll be a girl child, or the father's X and Y combined, in which case it'll be a male child, right? Now this is controlled by the gonadal steroid hormone, right? And whatever the DNA sequencing takes place, chromosomal sequencing takes place, by the 6th week, the actual differentiation in the physical body starts to take place, right? So when a child is born, right, they're born with all embryos have two things, that is the Wolffian duct and the Mullerian duct, right? These are two things that are present in the body, right? Wolffian ducts will form the male reproductive system. The Mullerian ducts will form the female reproductive system. Okay, please remember, Wolffian ducts will form the male. So think of like a wolf, male. I don't know, make that association. Mullerian duct, think of female. I don't know, some person called Muller, and think of female, and uh, create that connection, right? So that you don't forget. What happens is basically for a male child, right, there is the Y gene, right, XY chromosome called the SRY gene, SRY, right, SRY gene, whatever how you want to pronounce it. Now this will create a biochemical system, right, biochemistry system, which will create the male organs, right? So your basically what will happen is in that embryo, right, the Y chromosome will instruct the very small gonads over there to secrete anti-Mullerian hormone, right? So when they secrete anti-Mullerian hormone, the Mullerian ducts will dissipate, right? They'll degenerate, which is the female reproductive organ, right? Reproductive system, which gives birth to the female reproductive system, right? And then because there is no Mullerian duct, right, the Wolffian duct will actually start to function, and it will first develop into vas deferens and seminal vesicles, right? And then the rest of the gonad will sort of develop into the testis, the prostate gland, and the scrotum for the male. For the female, what happens is because there is no Y gene and there is no secretion of anti-Mullerian hormone, the Wolffian duct automatically starts to degenerate by the seventh, eighth week, right? Because there is no other stimulation taking place, right? The Mullerian duct will then form the fallopian tubes, the uterus, and the vagina. And external genitals will come between the ninth and the 12th week, right? So that's the way your sex differentiation sort of takes place in the prenatal stage, okay? In terms of the psychology around sexual motivation, it's basically to do with desire. It has less to do with instinct as it is for animals. It's like animals are on heat and they have certain seasons where they're more excitable in terms of having sex, etc. For humans, it's not like that. The brain controls sexual behavior, therefore, it's more about desire. Um, and arousal problems can be created due to stress, fatigue, anger, etc. etc. Say sexual orientation, right? Usually, they say that it's one continuum where it moves from homosexuality to heterosexuality and then bisexuality somewhere in the middle. But now there are so many different types of sexuality, so no longer is one continuum considered. However, they still try and break that down into saying that okay, pansexuals are here and this is here and that is there. Um, but basically, when you are reading research on sexual orientation, it'll tell you that there are three dimensions that are very important for a decision on what is one's orientation. It's to do with one's identity, what one is attracted to, right? And how the conditioning of sexual behavior has taken place, right? So these are three research-based dimensions that sort of help determine sexual orientation. However, there are other theories which talk about a lot of other stuff that can affect it, right? Learning being the least important of them. Um, then you have social motivation, that is in terms of your motivation towards society and about other people, and not just in terms of altruism, but in terms of how you react with your environment, right? And how your environment affects you and whether you're motivated to engage or not. So Craig Hill gave us 4 reasons why people are socially motivated. One is that interaction with other people positively stimulates us because they may praise us, they may say good things, and in general, having a social relationship helps. There is emotional support that people around us give us, right? Our friends, family, whatever. There is also the element of attention that we get, which is a secondary need all of us have. And then there is also, it also allows us to compare ourselves with other people and sort of say where we are in the hierarchy of things, right? So there are four major reasons why people are socially motivated according to Kriegel, right? So remember it as PPRG, right? Uh, so those are the. Then you have the need for affiliation, right? That's a very important construct uh, where the idea is that all human beings innately have a need to engage with other people and have some form of affiliated relationship with them. But that is different for different people. Okay. Some people have higher needs, some people have lower needs. There are moments where somebody might have a higher need. In general, they may have a lower need, right? So it follows like the homeostasis model, meaning that you're in a normal state, however you are, and then suppose somebody breaks up with you, your homeostasis goes off, right? And then maybe you become more uh, wanting affiliation at that point, right? To cover up that need. So that's one way of understanding it. So need for affiliation is friendly social interaction and social relationships with other. The classic characteristic is that the person who has high need for affiliation has a high need to be liked by others, held in high regard by them, always to be considered as good team players, right? So these are some characteristics of people with need for affiliation. If you see that symbol there, N and uppercase AFF, that's how need for affiliation is written. Then you have achievement motivation, that is the need for achievement, right? This is McClellan's need for achievement, need for affiliation, and need for power, right? So achievement motivation is about the need to achieve a goal, right? So all of us have certain goals for different things, and then there are needs and drives to achieve those goals, right? It works in two ways. There is one in which we have a positive desire to succeed. So you work hard so that you succeed, right? So you're goal directed. The other way achievement motivation also works is to have negative desire to avoid failure, saying that you work hard so that you don't fail and therefore you remain motivated to work, right? Because if you fail, something disastrous can happen to you. So there is a negative desire to avoid failure. You're not trying to excel, you're not trying to get success, you're not trying to succeed in it. All you're trying to do is that I don't want to fail at this, right? Uh, so, or naturally, if you are in the negative desire to avoid failure state, your performance will not be optimum. Whereas in terms of positive, your performance will be optimum, right? Uh, this is another important question that usually comes in net. Uh, People who have high need, right? High need achievers, they're generally people who are high in positive uh, need for success and they're low in negative desire to avoid failure. Whereas people who have low needs for achievement, they have low positive desire to succeed and low negative desire negative what is this negative desire to avoid failure. So for low need achievers, both are low. For high need achievers, the positive desire to succeed is high, whereas the negative desire to avoid failure is low, right? um, the other important question that net will often ask is when tasks are challenging, right? What is the difference between high need achievers and low need achievers, right? So if like people are given a task to do, what kind of tasks will high need achiever choose, and so what kind of task will a no need achiever choose, right? And then there's research evidence to suggest that people who are high on need achievement will always choose tasks that are moderately difficult, right? They're intermediate in terms of difficulty. Whereas people low in need achievement will either choose very hard or very easy. The reason being that if it's very hard, they have an excuse. If it's very easy, then they feel good about themselves, right? Uh, so that's basically one of those important research-based questions that come. But also in terms of how people perceive the outcome matters as well. So for a low need achiever, if they take an easy task and they do well, they're very satisfied and they may feel motivated. But in general, the rule is that if you are high on need achievement, you're going to then generally choose a moderately difficult task, which with effort you can succeed at, and that success will give you a greater form of reinforcement, right? That's why you choose a moderately difficult task. In achievement goal theory, right? This is saying that success is important in terms of how it is defined by the individual, right? And the situation itself. So it's not only about what my goal is, it's also about where I find myself. So say at the age of 30, I can't be like, oh, I want to become an Indian cricketer, right? That just doesn't make sense because the situation will not allow that to happen, right? So it matters on what the individual defines success as well as what the situation is. But generally, at the individual level, uh, there are two things that someone who has a goal and wants to achieve something, two things that they are focusing on. One is to improve at that particular task, so mastery orientation, right? To always do well at that particular task. The second is to outperform other people. So if you outperform other people, then you know you're doing well, right? So at the individual level, need for achievement works in that dimension. The situational level is when of the two, right? Uh, it gives impetus to either of the two. So if you are say in a village in Chhattisgarh or something, right? It's going to be very difficult for you to learn, say, fencing, right? Because even if you're good, even if you are doing better than everyone else in your village, the situation and the motivational climate will not be there where that can be pushed further up, right? Whereas if you're in a city, there is a higher chance that that might get pushed forward. So that is one of the criteria that the achievement goal theory lists out, saying that it's not only individuals' desire, it's also how the situation is. So you need to be cognizant of both of those things. And the last kind of need spoken about by McClelland was the need for power, which is the need to influence other people, to make an impact on them, to sort of have control over how people are viewing you and what they're doing and that sort of thing, right? So all three needs are, everyone has all three needs, but in different proportions. Some people have high need for achievement, some people have high need for power, some people have high need for affiliation. And depending on whichever need is higher, the person's behavior will sort of change and personality will change, right? The first type of conflict when you're trying to achieve a goal, right, is the approach avoidance conflict, which is basically when you achieve the goal, something positive will happen, but also something negative will take place, right? So, say for example, you want to make a lot of money, right? But to make a lot of money, you also know you need to work really hard, right? So there is an approach avoidance conflict saying that you're attracted to a particular goal, but you're repelled by the same goal because it's bringing some kind of pain associated with something that is not pleasurable. And as you start coming closer to the goal, right, you start to have like a more approach and avoidance. Like it starts to increase in amount, that conflict, right? Um, and when you reach towards the like the avoidance thing, basically how it works is when you set out for a goal, you start working towards it. Once you start working towards it, the avoidance tendency is increasing faster than the approach tendency, meaning that your thing of I don't want to work hard, I don't want to work hard, I don't want to work hard is working faster than I need to make money, I need to make money, I need to make money, right? But that only happens till a certain point, after which I need to make money, I need to make money starts to really move faster than the potential pain that you might get. But this is a scenario where the pain is not very extreme, right? But if the pain is very extreme, then this will always be more powerful, right? Our tendency is to generally avoid pain. So that's basically the approach avoidance conflict. And the person needs to decide whether they want to continue approaching the goal or they want to avoid approaching the goal and satisfy and make a decision, basically, right? So that's one kind of conflict. The other kind of conflict is the approach conflict, right? This is where there are, when you reach the goal, you will get two good things, but they are mutually exclusive, right? Meaning that if you get one, you are not going to get the other, right? So, say when you become the prime minister, for example, right? If that is your goal, you become the prime minister, you get power, right? And you get like you can do good governance or you can make money, right? But you can't do both. So that's an approach conflict, right? You can govern properly without corruption, or you can go into corruption and make money. So both are attractive alternatives, but once you select one, that means you're losing the other, right? Uh, in this scenario, the conflict will be really high to deal with if both of them have the same value for you. If money and power and good governance has the same value for you, then this conflict will be very, very difficult to deal with. But if one is more valuable than the other, then you let go of the one that is less valuable, right? Then you have the avoidance conflict, right? This is choosing between two undesirable alternatives. In this case, again, you will choose the one that is less undesirable, right? Um, so that's basically the three major types of conflict that are there. There are many others, but these are the three basic ones for net that are important. Um, in any of these decisions, in any of these conflicting decisions, there are two distinct systems that work, right? This was given to us by Jeffrey Gray, the BAS and the BIS system, right? That is the behavioral activation system and the behavioral inhibition system. The when you have an approach avoidance conflict, right, you'll have the behavioral activation system that will wake up and it will say that, hey, there are good things, there are pleasurable things, there will be positive stuff that will happen if you approach this goal, right? And then you feel excited, elated, and you feel happy. And the prefrontal left hemisphere will start to like sort of, it will lighten, right? Electrical circuitry will be very high. But then after that excitement takes over, then the behavioral inhibition system will take over and it will say that, oh my god, but to reach that there's so much work, you won't sleep, you won't eat properly, you won't do this properly. What if you fail? If you fail, then what happens, right? How will you make sure that you get food tomorrow, xyz, right? So all this fear, inhibition, etc. will start, and this is from the limbic system, that is in the like limbic system and the right frontal lobe, right? Both of them are working in conjunction. So whichever of the two systems are much stronger in the person, that will sort of allow them to make a decision about which way they want to tackle the conflict in order to achieve the kind of goal that they're looking to achieve. Um, First off, there is like something known as a stimulus motive, right? That is, there is an automatic response to a particular kind of stimulation. So arousal can increase even without our control, right? So you see something, it stimulates you, and then you get aroused, right? It's not only sexual arousal, any form of arousal can take place uh, for different kinds of stimuli for different people, right? Uh, but the idea is, according to the arousal theory, it works in an inverted U-shaped curve, where a certain level of arousal improves performance, right? And then it hits a peak, that is at that point of stress, at that point of arousal, performance is peaking, right? But anything more than that, then performance will start to dip and the stress will get too much, right? So this was also known as the Yerkes-Dodson law or the inverted U-shaped curve. So anything that's inverted U-shaped in nature, it's called the Yerkes-Dodson law, right? Saying that if your stress level increases till optimum point, performance will improve. After a certain point, performance start to suffer, right? So a moderate level of arousal leads to better performance. Then, however, arousal levels are different for introverts, extroverts, where extroverts require more sensory stimulus to get aroused, whereas introverts a little bit is enough, right? Therefore, extroverts tend to be more sensation seeking because they require more to get aroused, whereas for introverts, a little less is enough and they get aroused, and that biochemistry wise, they're aroused and they're fine, right? Then there are incentive approaches to motivation, which is similar to the self-determination theory, which says that if you have incentives, right, to give, then you'll attract people to work and the people will get motivated to work. And behavior is explained just generally in terms of external stimulus and the reward that they get because they engage in that behavior. But extrinsic motivation is always weaker than intrinsic motivation, irrespective of the kind of task.